Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The French heavyweight prospect Tony Yoka, who currently has a record of 8-0, the former Olympic champion also, has been confirmed to face Christian Hammer on November the 27th in France. So see here on screen, this is the poster from social media that Tony Yoka has put up, and the French translates to next fight on November 27. Despite the confinement, the conquest does not stop. So it will be the German Christian Hammer for my 9th fight in the pros. So Tony Yoka facing Christian Hammer, who's a tough, durable guy who's been on the fringe of the heavyweight division in terms of contention for about the past decade or so. And in Hammer, that represents that next sort of test and level that Tony Yoka needs to pass. And it's a good fight. More recently, Christian Hammer, he's fought the likes of Luis Ortiz, for example, took Ortiz all 10 rounds. He did lose that decision, but he is a good test. He's about 30th, somewhere there or thereabouts in the world. That's where I have him. BoxRec has him at 37 currently. But he represents that next step for Tony Yoka, a step a lot of prospects want at this stage. You're starting to put behind you some of the lower sort of tier prospect fights that you have on the way up. And Hammer, he's that next step, and if you pass it, look good, and you can get through him, then you're on to much bigger and better fights. Bearing in mind that Yoka has signed a deal with Top Rank on a co-promotional basis, he can't actually fight in the United States at the moment, because of the virus, so he's remained in France. This is the second fight that he's having since having signed that deal, although this seems to be outside of that. So he's keeping busy. And this is actually great fights for his development. It has to be said. He is starting to fashion one of the best records out of all the heavyweight prospects. Possibly the best already. For a guy under 10 fights, and let's just have a quick look at his record, who's already fought the likes of Johan Dorper, Mikhail Wallisch, Alexander Dimitrenko, Dave Allen, Cyril Leone, Jonathan Rice, and that is a very, very solid record for Tony Yoka for under 10 fights. Obviously, a lot of those guys are not world beaters or they're on the decline, but some of them good tests at the point that Yoka fought them. And he passed it with flying colours. And now he fights Christian Hammer, who I think has got a bit more left in the tank than a guy like Johan Dorper. Dorper, a former title challenger, could only last, half a round against Yoka. Stopped him in impressive fashion. This was only just a couple of months ago in September. I do think that Hammer is maybe a little bit sort of removed from what you'd call his prime, but in terms of this representing a good test for Tony Yoka, it is certainly that. Hammer, he will make it tricky and awkward. He knows how to survive. He knows how to spoil. He's gone the distance as well with guys like Alexander Povetkin too. Many other good fights that he's had. He is a guy now that's got a record of 25-6, but he will give Tony Yoka some good work, I think. Hopefully more than the rounds that Johan Dorper put up against Yoka, because I think for a lot of us we thought that one might go some rounds because Dorper previously had been known for his durability. That seemed to have deserted him in that fight. And I don't want to take away from Tony Yoka because it was an impressive performance, but I think Dorper, who was approaching 40 at that point, was a shadow of his former self. Hammer, although I think he's removed from his prime to some degree, 33 years old. It feels like he's been around forever and a day. And to some extent he has, because he turned pro all the way back in 2008. He's fought guys like Marius Vach, Tyson Fury, David Price. He beat David Price. He beat Erkan Tepe. So he is a known commodity. Obviously lost to Alexander Povetkin. Beat Mikhail Wallisch. This is the back end of 2018. So he's got a certain level in the heavyweight division, and it is around top 30 to top 40-ish. Maybe it used to be between top 20 and top 30, but I think he has just sort of lost a step. But for Yoka, that's beside the point at this point, because he's at a certain level and it's a good fight. I think that Tony Yoka, behind his height, reach, athleticism, he is going to control this fight. I don't see Hammer causing him too many problems. Although, Hammer does have a good overhand right. We saw that against Luis Ortiz in 2018. I do think that Tony Yoka will win this fight, and possibly even by stoppage. I think Tony Yoka is actually underestimated in terms of the punching power, and from what we've seen on display, he can punch. Maybe he's actually, had this man strength, as everyone always sort of refers to, come in recent years. But because he's been fighting a little out of sight, out of mind, I'm not sure people have really been keeping the same sort of tabs on him as they have other heavyweight prospects. And that can be easy to let someone slide off the radar when they're fighting in a country sort of out of sight, out of mind, not in the UK, not in the US. But Yoka has been doing all the right things recently, and for a guy under 10 fights, he really has fashioned a very impressive record, and some of the wins that he's had are also very impressive. But I think Christian Hammer has a bit more about him than, say, what Duopa had left in the tank, so I'm hoping this can go some rounds, because let's face it, if Tony Yoka is going to take a step up and face someone inside maybe the top 25, a legitimate top 25 guy, he needs to go into it with a little bit of activity and some rounds. Just blasting guys out in a couple of rounds probably doesn't do him, too many favors. Obviously, he'll be in the gym, working, all that sort of stuff, but nothing can beat the actual thing, replicating, what you're going to be doing and having some actual in-ring experience. And in the past year or so, he has been taking guys out generally within the sort of first, 2-3 rounds. And obviously Duopa last time out, that was just the one round. So hopefully this does go, some rounds. I think Christian Hammer's got enough that he can frustrate Yoka, provide some tests for him, and just, things for him to adjust to. And at this point, that's what you want to see. You want to see him tested to some degree. Maybe he's not always going to look perfect, but you don't expect that of a prospect that's coming through. You want to see them challenge sometimes, not have it all their own way. Because let's face it, to a large degree, Yoka has had it all his own way more recently. But what do you make of this fight? I think this is a really good fight for Tony Yoka at this stage of his career. I'm sure some other prospects will be quite envious, because this is the sort of fight guys like Daniel Dubois need at this point. That certain level where you can get a better measure of them. And at this point, Tony Yoka, because of the opponents who he's faced, he's currently on box record, at least, rated number 17th in the world. Maybe I wouldn't have him quite that high at that point on my list. I don't think I'd have him in my top 20. But beating a guy like that proves that, you're actually there or thereabouts in terms of, on the fringe for contention. Just a couple of good fights away from a heavyweight title shot. Obviously, in this day and age, it's a little bit cluttered and clogged at the top, so he might be sort of kept busy with other fights for some time, maybe for a couple of years. But he needs to do all the right things, look good, put the performances in to really get people taking note and going, hey, Tony Yoka is the next big thing. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.
Drive to the leg on the jump. 5 seconds. Keep going. Good work. Time. Over here. Pick a spot. Ready. Set. Go. 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 Good work. Perfect. Arms up. Gloves up. Higher, Mario. Higher. Higher. Good. 10 seconds. Work. Keep working. Now time. Oh, nope. Time. On the line. Now I need a strong sprint. 5, 4, 3, 2, go.